I've been using an iPhone exclusively since the iPhone 11. But a few years ago, I started to look over to see what was happening in the Android world. The foldable form factor specifically was what caught my attention. In years past, I've purchased iPads in all different sizes, whether it's the Pro and the Mini and the Air. And I've always wanted something to enjoy content on. And the iPad Mini seemed to really be the iPad for me. But when I started using it, it just felt like the operating system, iOS, was just basically a blown up iPhone. And I found that most of the sites, just by default, still served up the mobile version of their site and didn't really take advantage of that larger screen real estate. And so I found it to be just a redundant device, and I ended up actually finding myself just using my phone to do most of my content consumption. So that's where the foldables started to intrigue me. I thought maybe I could have a device that could do both things, like be a tablet when I wanted it to, and then be a phone when I didn't need the larger screen. And so that's what really started piquing my interest and really being in the back of my mind that maybe I might switch from iPhone. Even with that curiosity, the foldables at the time, to me at least, felt that they were too thick and too heavy for me to actually consider dailying them. And so that's when I ended up last year purchasing the iPhone Air. I instantly fell in love with how thin and light the phone was, and I didn't really find any trade-offs in the battery department. It wasn't until we took a trip to Vancouver that it really started weighing on my mind if this was really the phone for me, because being out there, if you've ever been to Vancouver, there's just sprawling landscapes, and I'd find myself wanting to shoot with a wide angle lens, and I just didn't have it. And so that's what really got me thinking into maybe I might make the switch actually now. This was also around the same time when Apple had released its liquid glass update with the latest version of iOS. And I had actually done beta testing over the summer, and I really felt like it was the wrong direction to take iOS in. I get that maybe they were wanting to unify their Vision OS, their Apple TV OS with the phone. But I didn't really like where that was going. To me, the translucency made it, at least text elements, harder to read, especially in the betas. And I did file feedback across certain apps, even on Android or Apple CarPlay. There was instances where you could hardly tell what the text was over the glass overlay. And so to me, it felt like they were just adding things for the sake of design and aesthetics, but at the sake of functionality and something that was basically unnecessary. Before the iPhone 11, I actually used to switch platforms pretty frequently, about every 6 months to a year. And that was due to me being a product manager and having products and apps that ran on both iOS and Android. And so I wanted to make sure that I kept up to speed with what was going on the latest releases for Android and iOS. The last Android phone that I had was the Pixel 3 XL. And at the time back then, I really felt that the Pixel hardware started out great. It felt snappy, the cameras were awesome. And then right around that 6-month mark, at least from my experience, the software would start to get sluggish, or it would feel glitchy at times. And then specifically the camera app sometimes would stutter, or it would crash all of a sudden. And so in 2019, being a new dad, I didn't want to have to deal with a phone that might not capture our daughter, who was a baby at the time. And so I just wanted a phone that worked. And so I switched over to the iPhone 11 at that point. And then I didn't look back since, till about last year, when I really started considering the move to Android. Before the iPhone 11, I actually used to switch platforms pretty frequently, about every 6 months to a year. And that was due to me being a product manager and having products and apps that ran on both iOS and Android. And so I wanted to make sure that I kept up to speed with what was going on the latest releases for Android and iOS. The last Android phone that I had was the Pixel 3 XL. And at the time back then, I really felt that like the Pixel hardware started out great. It felt snappy, the cameras were awesome. And then right around that 6-month mark, at least from my experience, the software would start to get sluggish, or it would feel glitchy at times. And then specifically the camera app sometimes would stutter, or it would crash all of a sudden. And so in 2019, being a new dad, I didn't want to have to deal with a phone that might not capture, our daughter, who was a baby at the time. And so I just wanted a phone that worked. And so I switched over to the iPhone 11 at that point, and then I didn't look back since. For me, the iPhone 15 Pro was really the peak iPhone Pro. When I received my 16 Pro in the mail, and I had both side by side, that slightly larger screen meant that it wasn't as easy to be a one-handed use type of phone. And then also for me, you could feel the weight differences from one to the other. And I didn't like that it had gotten heavier. I know that there was more battery, but for me, the iPhone 15 Pro was like perfect as is. And so that's what really started, I think, the doubts in my head in terms of like, maybe I'll take a look at Android. And I started seeing the rumors of the iPhone Air coming out. And so that's something that was always in the back of my mind. And so fast forward to 2025, I get the Air. I really liked the phone, but then when we went on our vacation to Vancouver, in the story that I shared, I think that was it for me in terms of, okay, I waited, I tried the Air, now it's time to like just try the switch to Android. Worst case, I'll try something for a year and have a new experience. So at the time when I was looking, I had gone to Best Buy, tried out the Galaxy Z Fold 7, and I love the phone. It's super thin. It weighs almost nothing. I mean, it does weigh something, but it weighs a lot less than you'd think, given that it's a foldable. But I couldn't see myself spending $2,000 on a cell phone. And then at the time, Google had also announced its 10 Pro Fold. So I went to the store, our local Google store, and I thought, that's the phone I'm gonna buy. That's what I'm gonna walk out with. When it's unfolded, the weight is pretty evenly dispersed, so it doesn't feel that heavy. But when you actually fold it and you try to put that in your pocket, it feels like a brick. So for me, like, I wear shorts a lot. I live in a hot area. I literally put a sample in my pocket and like it actually weighed down my pocket. And so that was sort of the deal breaker for me. Like, as it is, the iPhone 16 and 17 Pro were heavier than I'd want. And so having an even thicker and heavier phone was sort of the deal breaker for me in terms of the foldable form factor. So at this point, I decided that I was going to switch to Android, but the foldables that were in contention for me were out of the picture. I went to Best Buy and I picked up a Samsung Galaxy S25 Edge because that was the phone exactly like the iPhone Air that I had just left. And then I also picked up at my Google store the Pixel 10 Pro, and I figured I would give both of them a shot and then figure out which one I was going to keep. What ultimately led me to pick the Pixel over the S25 Edge really came down to two big categories. The first being photography, and that's sort of what led me to ditch the iPhone Air and look at these two Android phones. Seeing the pictures side by side that I took while I was testing both phones, I felt that the Pixel does a better job of capturing and rendering out, because of the computational photography, what you saw in that moment versus what came out of the S25 Edge. And so specifically, two examples come to mind, although I don't have those examples that I can share on the screen. When I was taking pictures of people and specifically the clothes that they were wearing, especially when you had darker colored clothing on, what I noticed was the Pixel actually captured, even though the polo was black, it actually captured the texture that was on the polo and you could see it, versus the S25 Edge. You could tell that I had a black polo on, but you couldn't actually tell that there was any texture to it. It sort of like applied a filter almost, is what it looked like. And then same thing, we have a dappled dachshund, and so if you know what those look like, it's a dog that has a bunch of different colors and patterns and dots all over their fur. And so what I noticed was the Pixel, you could actually tell all those colors, and you could actually see the texture in the fur itself. Whereas on the S25 Edge, you could see all those same colors, but again, it looked like a filter was applied, so you couldn't actually tell the texture on her fur. Being a pixel peeper, I could instantly tell, like, oh, that to me looked better. And obviously photography is subjective, so for me, the Pixel won in that case. And then secondly was that software aspect. Having used the call screen features, I get a lot of spam calls for whatever reason. So having call screen is a feature that I use. Using Google software, and like I said, it being the default app on the Pixel is what I really liked. And then also, I like demoing the latest betas that come out, so being able to hop on there and get the latest Android betas was something that was important to me. That ended up being why I ended up choosing, at least for me, the Pixel 10 Pro over the S25 Edge. Although, if you could get the Google Pixel camera on the S25 Edge, I think I'd probably choose that combo as my Android phone of choice. We're almost at the end of February, and I've been on Android since about mid-December, and I can honestly say that I've been enjoying my time. At least for me, it's nice to be okay with being able to change back and forth. So I look forward to where Android goes, and then I'm also excited to see where the iPhone goes and if the iPhone Fold comes out. But for now, I've actually been really happy with my Pixel. And yeah, my next video, I'm looking to document some of the things I've liked most about being on Android, having moved over from an iPhone. So if you want to see that video, please subscribe and like this video. Thanks for tuning in.